In the Money is made possible by financial support from Old National Bank and Chicagoans like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to In the Money. I am your host, Kimberly Loftus, a CPA and financial executive who today is financially secure, but was not always. All of my adult life, I've had to depend on myself for my own financial well-being. So within my personal relationships, I've had a hard time not being the one who manages the money. I have found that it is important that my partner shares the same values around money. I am a saver who believes money is about freedom and experiences, not necessarily about material things. If your partner is the opposite, then I have learned the hard way there will be issues. It is not because one person is right and the other person is wrong, but your foundation around how you think and feel about money differs so greatly that it creates problems, unless one person is able to give over the control of the pocketbook. Well, as I said before, I need to be in control. So I got some issues. Let's see if our next guest can help me out as well as you. Today in our living room, I have Tamika Hill, a licensed clinical social worker and author. Welcome to the show, Tamika. Can you explain how mismatched financial foundations can impact a romantic relationship?
Oh, yes. Unequally yoked. Old school, right? Because you have one person who's pouring in and the other person's pouring out. That is definitely one of the number one reasons for relationships breaking up.
Can you define what you mean pouring in versus pouring out?
So you have the person who's the moneymaker, perhaps, right? And who balances the books pretty well, but then you have the compulsive spender who likes all the shiny objects. And so if I'm making $200,000 and you're spending $400,000, then that's where we're unequally yoked because I'm pouring in and you're pouring out.
No, those relationships doomed?
They're not doomed if you really can relinquish and compromise. I don't like to say control because then that makes somebody feels like they're losing their independence or their autonomy. But it's about knowing your strong points, your vulnerabilities, and your strengths in the relationship.
So when you're in the relationship, it's hard to see that there are issues around money. So what are some things that you can find out if you're financially mismatched? What are the things that you should be looking for to see if that is your foundation's kind of rocky?
I always say pay attention to small stuff. Pay attention to how much somebody spends or how much somebody doesn't spend, because the other side of that too could be a person is a super saver or frugal and they don't want to spend at all. So I think when you're in relationships, you have to pay attention how people pay their bills, how they spend their money, how they save their money, how they talk about money, how they talk about credit. And I think we have to grow and normalize talking about money and credit.
So if I'm in a relationship but I'm not living with that person yet, how am I supposed to even know that there's issues or potential issues around money? I mean, how do I even broach that conversation?
Straightforward. And also there's a subtle thing of watching too, right? Just when you're dating, eventually subjects of money come up indirectly when, oh, I need to pay this bill, or start paying attention if they have to keep going through so many credit cards when it's time to pay the bill. That's a tell sign that, oh, you know, or they got to transfer money, or they got to see how much money. That's a tell sign that there may be some money troubles there. And I think, again, just old school having conversations.
Now, you had mentioned earlier not using money to control a person. So say, doesn't matter if they're the male or the female in the relationship, if one makes more money, like they contribute 80%, and the other person only contributes 20% based off of how much they bring in, period. It's not that they don't want to give more, that's all they can give. How do you balance that in a relationship?
So what if the person who makes 20% actually is the better money spender or saver? Because we tend to think people who make more money have better financial habits, but that's not the case.
So how do you take into account that you're uneven in your contribution from a dollar standpoint just because you make different money? How do you prevent somebody being resentful? How do you balance that out?
I think in relationships, it's more than just money when you start talking about equal or who's bringing in more or less, because this person may, pay 80% of the bills, but what are they also not contributing? Because that means, okay, maybe they're not doing the cooking, maybe they're not doing the shopping, or maybe they pay all the bills, but maybe the other person goes grocery shopping or, spends money. Because sometimes I think we minimize the essentials of living and we don't take into account how much it actually costs for milk, tissue. Right. Those things matter too.
So what you're saying is have a more holistic view of the relationship, not just, hey, this person brings in more money versus what they contribute to the relationship. The contribution could be money, could also be physical things, like you said, cleaning and taking care of the kids and things like that, but not just focus on money.
And also, I would piggyback though too, just because the person who makes the more money, how are their financial habits? Because that's not always, just because you make more, it doesn't mean like you're the better person with money.
So you should look at the relationship, and for that particular job in the household, it should go to the person who can manage it better, not necessarily the person who makes more money.
I think a compromise again. I think like there should be a set upon agreement, like, okay, because again, most people don't want to give up their check and then just have an allowance.
Right.
Right. But the truth is having maybe 2 different accounts could work sometimes, where there's just the bill money and that person contributes so much to that fund. And the person who's better with money like deals with that, and then their free money is theirs to, play with or whatever. Because again, you don't want to go into controlling. It's about compromise and being the strength in where somebody's weak at.
So if we go back to having those conversations prior to either living together or getting married, like what are some of the questions someone should ask?
I think when you're in a serious relationship, I think it's okay to say, like, what's your credit score? Let me see it. I don't think anything's wrong with it. We look at everything else.
Right, that's true.
And if you get as intimate as, like, with intimacy, why can't you get that intimate with money?
But what if I'm offended? Like, you all up in my pocketbook.
You share fluids, you should share money. Sorry. I'm just saying.
Definitely understand that. So we've talked about having those conversations, things to look out for. And so we discovered during that process that maybe my partner and I are mismatched. What can I do to start getting us on a sound financial foundation where we're both, we are who we are, but we can still have a successful relationship?
And that's where I said counseling comes in, or compromise. If you don't want to go to a counselor, sitting and having uncomfortable conversations, not when you're angry, not when all the bills are behind, but when you're in a good space and say, hey, what are some suggestions that we can compromise, because I'm a saver and you're a spender. So how can we compromise in the middle where you get to spend and I still get to save?
Okay. So do those things that we're going to spend on, they have to be shared values? Like, for example, I believe in my children having higher education, so I would want a college fund. I think about the future. That person might be more short-term in nature, where, hey, the car's going to break down in 2 years. We should focus more on the short term. How do you get over that gap of thinking, the long-term versus short-term spending?
I think that's where you have to be your individual self in the relationship. That's where maybe you're putting your savings to, and maybe they have an emergency savings fund.
Okay.
So there's 2 different savings, both are your own values, and you use it according to, per se, your values.
But isn't that bypassing the whole reason that you get together and create this family environment, that you're doing things together? Because now it sounds like we're just individually doing our own thing.
Just because you're married doesn't mean you're not still an individual. You're a couple, but even with being a couple, right, realistically, you wake up in your own head. Nobody else is there. So you're still an individual.
Right.
It doesn't, because you're married, you don't take on somebody else's values. You compromise with values. You don't take over, because then that's actually brainwashing. Not to say one is more or less, because we have to get away from my values are better than your values. And you can't take away, like the value you said would be education for you. And that's a good value, but so is the emergency saving funds of a car breaking down. So why do we have to like put everything together? Because we're still individuals with individual purposes.
So say an example that we don't really have the money to have these separate accounts. We have to come together as a unit and decide where that money is going to go, because we just don't have the luxury to have somebody build an emergency fund and another person build a college fund. What do you do in those instances?
Being honest, right? small steps, because you still have to find compromise, because if you don't have the budget per se, then that means that if you think about it, you're saving for a college. What if the kid doesn't want to go to college? Or the flip side is, what if there is an emergency with the car and you don't have the money? Then what?
Right.
So that means realistically, to me, you're not being realistic with savings at that point.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay. And so is it just a lot of communication back and forth and staying calm and kind of working it out? And we say baby steps. What does that look like?
So to me, baby steps, right, are starting off soft. Asking each other, like, what are your values? What's important to you? And not disregarding that. Because immediately sometimes, like you said, I'm just going back, I value college savings. And the other person will savings for if a car breaks down. You can't throw that away and think that's less value because your education is higher. They're both on the same playing field. So being open to finding compromise, and it's constant communication, because I know a lot of couples, when I've done couples therapy, where one is a spender, one is a saver, and they had to find compromise in having accounts with bill paying strictly, and then like I know some couples have what they call their fund money for vacation, and then they have outside of fund money and bill money, then they have separate accounts outside of that.
Okay. So it sounds like some mix of possibilities to make that relationship work when it comes to money. Thank you so much, Tamika.
No problem.
Hi, I'm Corey Timms, host of In My Own Words. Tune in this Friday at 7:30 p.m. on Channel 19 as we hear the personal journeys of some of Chicago's most influential leaders.
Wouldn't you love to sit back, relax, and know that your finances are taken care of for you? Saving money requires willpower, and this can be tough. Let's give you an example. Every New Year's, people set resolutions to try to be better. What happens generally is people fail on those resolutions. We don't want that to happen with money. Many times people want to save money, but other things keep coming up. Example, maybe I'm trying to put back money for something and I go to the bank and I say, I'd like to save this month, but let me pick back up next month to really get things going. And then I come back next month and, well, another excuse has popped up. We want to make sure that we're avoiding those type of scenarios, and I will work on automating my finances. Automation is key. When you automate your finances, it puts you in control of your money and not your money in control of you. Don't force yourself to go to the bank every time you get paid to deposit that money in a savings account. I want you to work with your local banker or use online or mobile banking. Transfer a certain amount each time you get paid into a savings account. For example, if I just put back $20 a week out of every weekly paycheck, I'm going to generate over $1,000 a year in that savings account. And when you don't see the money, you don't miss it, you don't spend it. So let's talk about some benefits of this. Paying yourself first. We understand that we all have bills to pay, whether it's the mortgage or the auto payment or the electric. And what happens is if we don't pay some of those other bills, we may lose some things in our life. But if we don't pay ourselves, nobody really comes to get us. So I want you to hold yourself accountable. You can save for any number of reasons, whether it be vacation, new car, etc. But I want your first choice to always be putting that money in an emergency fund. We never know when emergencies are going to pop up. So think about what's important to you, back into the numbers, and make it possible through automating finances. So for example, if I want to save $5,000 for a down payment on a new house in 5 years, simply put $20 a week into that savings account every single week, and in 5 years you'll have over $5,000. When you are intentional about your finances, you can achieve more than you think. Be sure to work with your local banker to start automating your finances today.
Now joining us is Katrina Pickett, mother, wife, and finance guru, who's going to share with us how she was able to successfully blend her and her husband's money styles. Welcome to the show, Katrina. When you first met your husband, how does your money styles differ?
Our money styles differed because I was more self-conscious about money, and he was a little bit more lax.
Okay.
So I was more so, a single mother. So money was very, strict for me and how I manage it and all of that. And he was more of a bachelor, so.
So you had to be strict because, you had more than one person to think about and it had to go further for every dollar that you made. But since he was a bachelor, it was all about him. He could spend it however he wanted to because he wasn't, he didn't have a dependent that he had to spend the money on.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. So every dollar for me, was accounted for. Or I had to think about, the future of my daughter and myself as well.
So mentally, did you feel like he had more joy when he spent his money and you had less joy? Not that you weren't a happy person, but you had like obligations, so you didn't get as much joy out of your money as like maybe he did?
I would say that is very true. He seems, less stressed. He's a very laid back person and he's more laxed about things. Whereas me, I'm just more, every dollar, every cent.
So how'd you guys, merge your foundation financially?
It was a balance between the two. He kind of balanced me out to not be, so overly, strict about money. But I still was, I'm more of a money manager than he was, though, still.
So how today do you get more joy out of money that you weren't getting before you were married?
Well, for us, we came together. It's the trust factor. I demonstrated to him that I was stronger in that area, but also we would benefit from me being stronger in that area as well. And we've been able to have a nice lifestyle because of it.
So as you come together in your relationship and your foundation, you're able to take those dollars further, but you're also able to do joyful things because you're not stressed out about paying bills as a single person with a child versus being part of a couple?
Yes, that's very true because, all work and no play is just really an unhappy marriage. You become an unhappy person. Money is necessary, but...
So how did you build that foundation? Because you guys had such differences in how you handle money. So I get that there was a trust component, but you had to build that trust some kind around money. He could trust you overall, but how did you build that trust over money that he wouldn't overspend and that you wouldn't hoard money? How did y'all get there?
We had to have the hard conversations about money. And I had to show him, that money is a tool for us in which we can live a lifestyle that, benefits the both of us.
So how did you show him? Give me an example.
Well, by just sitting down, showing him showing me his finances, I'm showing him what I'm coming to the table with, and we both just, looking at that and seeing how we can build upon. We could build a foundation off of what we bring together.
And did you have any shared values when it comes to money that helped?
Yes, most definitely. I came from a family where they own property. My husband did too. So he had that foundation to understand, two is better than one. We're stronger together than apart. So
so your
that was
foundation
very helpful.
Consisted of you having the same value with what you use money for to grow money, it sounds like through investment property, for example. But you also have that trust factor because you opened up and let your guard down. Even though you're in a relationship, we talk about a lot of things, but a lot of times we don't talk about money.
True.
But it seems like you guys were able to come over that and be able to talk about money and share what your common goals were.
That is very true. And he was very open to that. Some people are very private. Or they're not open because they're embarrassed about they don't make enough money or, of those type of things. You have to be open. You got to relinquish that power, and be okay with that.
Now, as far as your building trust and comfortability about talking about your household finances, is a budgeting process part of that, like a personal budget, a family budget? Is that part of your process that you guys were able to come to?
Yes. It is a part of my process. I've been in the finance field for over 20 plus years, so I'm all about dollars, numbers, and cents. So that's exactly each month. I know exactly what we're starting off with, what we're ending off with, and just being able to pinpoint, some of the things that we can change.
Now, did it take a long time to build that foundation? Was you guys having so many differences in money?
It didn't. It really didn't. He came in open. So, everybody don't do that, but he was very open to it.
Okay, sounds like y'all had a good time. He made it easy. This is a good match.
Did.
So your foundation was basically communication, kind of like what Tamika said, our earlier guest, about communication, but also giving up the pocketbook.
Yes.
Was that hard for him to give up that pocketbook and let you make those decisions?
It was not. It was not, because I think I demonstrated that to him, coming into the relationship. He's seen that I had built some things. I owned a condo. I had traveled, all of those different things, and I made him feel comfortable as well.
So what about, so he's allowing you, or as a couple, you have decided that you'll be the lead on the financial piece.
Yes.
But how do you decide as a couple where that spending is going to be? I mean, do you already have talked about it as far as your budgeting process? Like, this is our goals for the year. Like, will he be shocked if you spend something on it, something and you didn't talk to him about it first?
No, he really doesn't question me about the finances, because a person has to really trust you to be able to do that and know and to know that you have their best interests at heart.
Now, what about information sharing? So he trusts you, but do you also, does he have insight how everything is? Like, he knows what the dollars and cents, if they're in the account, and generally where the money is going?
He doesn't ask the questions unless, he is interested in something.
Okay.
And then we have the conversation about those different things. But he knows that I am available, that's available to him at any time if he's interested in it or whatever. But he knows that I have his best interests at heart, and so he trusts me. We built that trust from the beginning. And having that communication, having the hard talks about finances and how important it is.
Was that stressful in the beginning, even though he's open? Did you feel any angst about talking about money at all?
From the beginning, yeah, you probably have that resistance because you're just getting to know one another.
Right.
So it's like,
well, no,
I'm not going to tell you.
I got to ask the question. When you were dating, did you ask these questions? Did you wait till y'all were really serious?
Oh, not from the beginning, but as things progress and it got more serious, yes, I asked the questions because I had good credit.
Right.
So it was important to me that he also had good credit, and I was willing to help him with that.
Did it take a lot for you were you stressed about asking those questions?
It did not. It did not.
Do you think that's a lot to do with your finance background versus the average person maybe would be uncomfortable?
The average person probably would.
You have any tips for that person who's not finance oriented to help them have that conversation?
I would just say, be honest. Just sit down and talk about the hard things, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, if that's your value and money, and you're a money manager and it's important to you, have the conversation, no matter what.
So even if you're, being open, you should be open about the good things that you do with money, but also the things that are going to be challenging in a relationship. So if I have all this debt, my partner or future partner shouldn't be surprised, but you also should be honest if you're good with money and just say, but you shouldn't be hiding stuff.
Yes, you should talk about it. I mean, you want to come into the relationship open, understanding, what someone's strengths and weaknesses are. Where I'm strong, you may be weak, and where he's weak, I may be strong. And so, as long as the two balance each other.
Well, thank you, Katrina. Those are a lot of good tips, and I'm glad that you and your husband were able to build a strong financial foundation.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Tawana Streeter, host of DIY DEI. Tune in on Mondays at 7:30 p.m. as I discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace.
As we look to the future in our relationships, blending finances is a crucial aspect and has a large impact on the success or failure of that relationship. By having open and transparent communication, setting shared financial goals, and creating a budget that aligns with your shared values, you can build a strong foundation for financial harmony. As we navigate this financial journey, it's important to remember that compromise and flexibility are key to finding balance. By embracing this process and working together towards shared financial goals, you can create a bright and prosperous future for your relationship. My challenge to you is to find the common values you share with your partner and build your financial goals from that foundation. Both you and your relationship will thank me. Remember, we're on this journey together.